one of the biggest things that needs to happen in connection with seeking a job is interviewing, and that's what we're here to talk about today. Before we get into the guts of it, I have a few preliminaries that I'd like to go over. The first is the interview is kind of a curious interaction in its way. It's a delicate dance between two people who are sort of trying to work out a bargain or an agreement, and both of them are buying, and both of them are selling. The company that's doing the interview or the organization, they're selling themselves, and they're in the business of hiring somebody. Otherwise, there wouldn't be an interview going on. The interviewee, the person who's being interviewed, if you will, that person is selling himself to the company. He's also trying to figure out whether he wants to go to work for this company. So it's an interesting dynamic. You got two buyers and two sellers, both in the same room, trying to make a deal with one another. But that is what it is. You are both a buyer and a seller. The company or organization you interview with is also a buyer and a seller. Everybody's trying to do the same thing at the same time. Let me also mention that if you are an interviewee, and I'm going to assume for purposes of my discussion today that you're an interviewee, you're a law student looking for a job, and while, yes, you are buying and you are selling, my remarks will be oriented around you as the seller. That's just the way I'm thinking and the way I think you may be thinking. And frankly, in the job market for lawyers today, I think it's probably a good idea that we both be thinking that way. When you're in an interview as a seller, the buyer's on the other side of you, I think it's interesting and important to think about what is in the mind of that person on the other side of you. What are they trying to figure out? And I think there is an answer to that question. They're trying to figure out three things. First of all, are you a likable person? They're figuring they're going to be, if they hire you, they're going to be working with you not just for a little while or for a day or two. They're going to be working for you for a long time, maybe even for a life. Are you a likable person? Do they want to be in the same room with you for hours at a time? Do they want to spend days and nights with you? And do the other people in the organization want to do the same thing? Likability is a big deal in all of this, and I think the first thing that an interviewer is trying to figure out about you is whether they like you. Simple as that. Next, what they want to know about you is, are you a producer? Are you going to bring value to that organization? Not only do they like you, but also, are you the kind of guy, the kind of woman who is going to produce for them, who is going to accomplish something for them? Whether it's a nonprofit or a for-profit or anything else, any organization that's looking to hire you is looking to hire you because they want you to bring them value and get stuff done for them, produce for them. So the second thing, are you a producer? The third thing is maybe a little unique to the law industry, but maybe not. The third thing an interviewer on the other side of you is trying to figure out is, if they give you an offer, are you going to accept it? And if you accept that offer and come to work for them, are you going to be there for the long haul? They're really interested in that because, frankly, no organization these days is in the business of free training for entry-level employees. If you go to work for anybody, they want to know that you're coming to work for them for the long term. You're not just coming to try them out and then move on to your next job. So, those three things. Are you likable? Are you a producer? Are you going to accept the offer and be there for the long term? That's what I think the interviewers are trying to figure out from you. The reason why I say that is, if you understand what they're trying to figure out, you can think about how you would like to present yourself and present yourself in the way that's going to work for you in the face of those three questions. One more thought that's worth sharing, and this is by way of confidence and feeling good when you're in an interview. If you've been invited to interview at a company or at an organization of some kind, you're pre-qualified. They wouldn't have invited you there if they didn't think that you're a candidate and that you might be somebody that they want to hire. They've seen your resume. They've learned something about you. There may be references already. In any event, they've already made a decision that you're a candidate. So that's kind of nice to know when you go to an interview. You've already pre-qualified to be a successful candidate in that interview. And the final preliminary, before we get into the guts of it, an interview is an interview. They're all the same. A callback interview is an interview. An on-campus interview is an interview. If you're having coffee with somebody at Starbucks who has a job that you'd like to get, you're in an interview. Anytime you're interacting with somebody who is in a situation involving a job that you'd like to have, and you're in the market for a job, you're in an interview. So a lot of the things that I'm going to have to say about interviews are true about on campus, in office, at an organization, at a place where you've been able to come up with a job interview. The things that I'm going to say apply to all of those things. And keep in mind, if you're looking for a job, you're oftentimes in an interview and on stage, and you ought to conduct yourself with that in mind. Getting into the guts of it a little bit, what about interviewing? And I'm going to dispense with saying again and again, doesn't matter what kind of an interview it is. If you're headed for an interview, what are the things you need to be doing? First, you need to research the organization. Keep in mind, you've probably already researched this organization. You've been in the hunt for a while, probably, if you're in the 2L job-seeking process or any other interview process. You may have researched it already. Research it again before you go to the interview. Why do it again? It's not just so that you know about the company or know about the organization. It's because the person you're interviewing with is going to expect that you have done some research. They will expect that you have looked at their website. They'll expect that you have asked around about them. Most of all, they'll expect that you've looked at their website and that you know what's in there. That's part of what you do when you interview these days, and so you certainly want to do that. You can look at other sources, at career services, talk to lawyers, talk to other people about the firm or the organization, but certainly, for goodness sake, read the website and know what's in there. Interview day logistics, which is, to me, something that's pretty important. Make sure you don't make a mistake with respect to an interview, because make a mistake with respect to the logistical aspects. If you do, many people will sympathize with you, but some other people may hold it against you. Pay attention to it. Know where you're supposed to go. Know exactly where you're supposed to show up. Figure out what the parking situation, if you're driving there, figure out what the parking situation is, because parking oftentimes is the most confusing part of getting to where it is you're trying to go. Know the time when you're supposed to arrive and be there 15 minutes early. Very important. Try to figure out the details about your interview day, and you can ask about it. How many interviews are there going to be? How long are the interviews? Is there a meal during the day, a dinner or a lunch or a breakfast as part of the interview process? If there is, it's something good to know. Importantly, if you can possibly do it, get a list of the interviewers. And getting a list of the interviewers is not something that you have to sneak around about or be secretive about or make a big deal of. You can ask. If you're going to a company or a firm, go to the recruiting person, the recruiting coordinator or the recruiting staff person. See if it's possible that you can get a list of the interviewers that are going to be having conversations with you during the day so that you can know who they are. Why would that be? I guess it's pretty obvious. If you know who they are, you can find out something about them before you go into the interview, and that's kind of a nice compliment to people when you're interviewing with them. They're going to know a lot about you. It doesn't hurt for you to know about them, and for that matter, to sort of make it evident that you know something about them in the course of the interview. They will be complimented to know that you've taken the time to figure some things out. Appearance. I'm not going to spend the day on this. I'm not an expert on the subject of appearance, but I will tell you this, appearance is important. The way you appear is the first thing that a person sees who is interviewing with you. They see you before they say a word to you, and they size you up based on what they see before they even say a word to you. It's a fact of life. It's been written about, but take my word for it, it makes a difference. So pay some attention to it. My thoughts have mostly to do with men's appearance, in fact, pretty much exclusively. Men's appearance. If you're a woman, you need to worry about it too, believe me, but I'm not going to be your advisor on that. I think you should go to Career Services, speak with the women who are there, talk to them about all the things that you need to talk about with respect to appearance. And I don't need to tell you what those are. So let me talk a little bit about men. My one thought, well, the first thought is your outfit. If you need to wear a suit. You need to wear business attire to an interview if you're interviewing for a job. If somebody tells you otherwise, if it's a casual Friday and people say you don't have to dress up, my advice to you would be dress up on the more dressy side than on the less dressy side. But in general, it's business attire, and that's what you ought to do. If you're a man, it's a gray suit, or it's a navy blue suit, it's a white shirt, and it's a conservative tie, and it's shoes that are shined. That's what people are going to expect of you. And if you come in less than that, it's going to get noticed. An interview is not a time to make a fashion statement, in my estimation, especially for lawyers. If you want to make a fashion statement, do it another time. If you want to take a chance, hey, it's a free country. You can do what you want, of course. Somebody may notice that you're a fashion plate, and that's great. Others may think something different. You can't go wrong dressing conservatively and looking, if you will, regular for your interview. Hair is important. Get it if you're a man. Get a haircut before you go. Don't go there looking as if you need a haircut. If you have a beard or a mustache or a goatee or whatever you have by way of facial hair, that's fine. Again, it's a free country, but at least trim it up before you go. If you have tattoos or piercings, frankly, my advice to you on that is cover them up. Don't wear the piercings and cover up the tattoos if you can. Again, you are who you are, do what you want, but some people will be off-put by tattoos and piercings. Fact of life. You're in a conservative industry, and you won't see many of the senior partners running around with tattoos and piercings. So go with the flow. Jewelry, sort of the same thing. If you're a man, wear your wedding ring or your class ring, but otherwise, if I were you, I'd leave it at home. Some people might like it, but other people might wonder about whatever piece of jewelry it is you're wearing, so I'd say leave it at home. Comportment. How are you supposed to act? My advice on that is remember your manners. Remember what your mother told you when you were growing up about how you should act. And remember the social conventions. After that, how you should act is sort of beyond my pay grade. But do remember your table manners. Remember how people are supposed to get in and out of elevators. Remember who's supposed to open the door for whom. And do the right thing. I guess I can't have a talk about interviews without talking about handshakes, so I'm going to say a word about handshakes. They should be firm. You ought to have a firm handshake. If you're a man, don't crush a woman's hand when you shake hands with her. That's not good. If you're a woman, come up with a firm handshake because it's important for you too. Here's a hint that you might not hear just anywhere. When you shake hands, your hand should be parallel to the ground. If women particularly make a mistake on that, they sort of hand a person their hand and hope that somebody will shake their fingers. Don't do that. Make it parallel to the ground. Make it firm. You should take with you some kind of portfolio or envelope briefcase to carry papers in. You need to have with you copies of your resume, copies of your writing samples, copies of your transcript. Those, of course, will have been circulated to the interviewers, but if one of them has lost it or didn't get the email or whatever, you can save the day by having a copy of your papers for that person. They can play catch up and get to where they need to go. Keep in mind when you go to an interview that everybody that you interact with is an interviewer. That is to say, anybody who you run into, have an interaction with, is likely to have a say in the process of evaluating you, especially if you are dismissive of them or rude to them or off-putting to them. Lots of interviewees make this mistake. They think that because the interviewers, they think that the only people that matter are lawyers who are in the actual interviews, and the staff people, the recruiting people, the receptionist, the messenger, the people that walk you from interview to interview, those people can all be dispensed with and don't matter much. Don't make that mistake. They do matter. They matter a lot, and particularly they matter if you do something that is offensive. It won't go over too well, and it will not inure to your benefit. The interview itself. Finally, we're going to talk about the interview itself. First of all, remember the interviewer's objectives. I'm going to say it one more time. Do they like you? Are you a producer? Are you likely to accept their offer and come to work for them and stay for the long term if they make you an offer? Those are the things they care about. Those are the things you ought to care about as you go through the interview process. When you're interviewing, be yourself. It's not going to do you any good to try to be the person who you think the interviewer wishes you would be. You need to be yourself and sell yourself. That's what you're trying to get done. If you try to be somebody else, you're not going to be able to carry it off very long or probably very well. So just be yourself. Be, of course, the very best presentation of yourself that you can possibly be. Be yourself. You're there to have a conversation. Be pleasant, talkative, have a nice conversation. What you're there for and what the interviewer is there for, remember, I said you're both buyers and sellers, and you are. You're having a conversation. It should be pleasant. Both of you should leave that conversation thinking that you were delighted to meet the other person. And you sure did have a nice, pleasant, comfortable conversation. That's what you want to make happen in the interview. What questions should you expect in an interview? Your resume is going to be the roadmap for your interview. The interviewer has your resume. The interview should have read your resume and probably made some notes on it before the interview. Why is that? Well, an interviewer is expected to have read the resume. It's just a matter of style and grace. That's what people do. For that reason, though, since the roadmap or the resume will be the roadmap, make sure you are ready to answer questions about anything that is in your resume. That goes for courses that you've listed, that goes for jobs that you've listed, that goes for activities that you've listed. If you have listed hobbies and interests, which is fine, many people do it in their resumes, you need to be ready to talk about those hobbies and interests. And don't list hobbies and interests that you don't really mean. If you don't know anything about football, don't say that football is one of your hobbies. If you haven't read a book lately, don't put down that reading is a hobby. If you've said reading is one of your interests and hobbies, you probably better be ready to talk about the last 2 or 3 books you've read. I think you get the message. The resume will be the roadmap, though. They'll also ask questions to gauge your interest in the firm. This goes to the third part of what they're interested in that I've said 2 or 3 times already. You will get questions in your interview, maybe from every one of the interviewers, as to why it is that you're interested in the firm and why it is that you're interested in the city where the firm is located. You're going to get tired of this question as you go through your interview day. But you need to be ready to answer it, and you need to answer it consistently. If you're from New York and you're interviewing in the city of Atlanta and you've never done anything other than public interest work, and that shows in your resume, you're going to get questions about all those things. Why is it you want to live in Atlanta if you were born and raised in New York? Why is it that you want to work at a for-profit law firm if all you ever done is nonprofit stuff and work for the people? You need to be able to answer those kinds of questions. They'll come up. A few interviewers will be more purposeful. They'll try to get at whether you're the kind of worker that they want to hire for that firm. If you're interviewing at a law firm, which you will be, there will be a few interviewers who will try to determine in the conversation and with the questions that they ask whether you're hardworking, whether you're a leader, whether you're inquisitive, whether you finish the job, whether you are going to do whatever it takes to find the answer, whether you get along with other people, whether you have high emotional intelligence, whether you're an independent thinker. All those kinds of things. You can make a list a mile long of the kinds of characteristics that would be appropriate from the point of view of a lawyer who's hiring a new associate. And they may ask questions to try to get at those things. If they do, answer them honestly, answer them in a way that's likely to reflect the best on you, and you're going to do fine. What about questions you should ask? It's just a fact of life that when you have interviews, the interviewers are going to, at some point, find a way to inquire of you whether you have questions of them. Most of the time or many times that happens at the end of toward the end of the interview. What questions do you have about our firm? What questions do you have about what we do? You need to have some questions. I'm going to say that again. You need to have some questions because they're going to expect you to have some questions about the firm. If they inquire of you, do you have any questions about our firm? And you say, no. That's not going to go over too well. So you need to have some. And you can ask the same questions of several interviewers. There's nothing wrong with that. That'll be pretty much expected and not a problem of any kind. So you don't have to have a million questions, but you do have to have some good questions to ask the people who you're interviewing with, whether or not you ask the same questions of the same interviewers, which you may. Again, you may do that. My thinking on that is that you should ask sort of open questions that any lawyer in the firm would be able to answer or would have some thoughts about. What makes this firm different from others its size? That's a pretty typical question, frankly, but it's not an unfair question. And it's a good open-ended question. Every lawyer in the firm will have some ideas about that. How would you describe the firm's culture? People have different ideas about that, and it's something that you are and should be interested in, as I've mentioned before in these remarks. Has the firm changed since you've been here? Or has it changed in the last 15 years if you're talking to somebody who's been there for 30 or 35? But that's an important thing for you to know, and it's an easy question for people to answer. What changes would you expect in the firm over the next 15 years? That's also a question people ought to have a good idea about, and it's something they can talk about easily, and it's something that would be good for you to know about and to hear about from different people, because different people there will have different ideas. Those are some thoughts. Another one, what was the highlight of your practice at the 3-year, the 5-year, the 10-year mark? What things do associates in this firm do, or young people in this firm do after they've been here for 2 or 3 years? What do they do after they've been here for 5 or 7 or 10 years? Something you'd like to know, and it's a question that wouldn't be unexpected. Again, open-ended questions that people can answer and that they'll have ideas about. There are questions that you shouldn't ask, too. Don't ask questions about partner compensation. That is an absolute no-no. When I say absolute no-no, some partners might not be put off, but I can almost guarantee you if you're interviewing with 6 or 7 or 8 people, 2 or 3 of the partners will be put off by that because it's just sort of not something you ask about when you're trying to get a job at that firm. You should not ask questions that have an obvious answer on the firm's website, circling back to what I said before, that you should read the website and know what's there before your interview. If you ask questions that have answers on the website, particularly if they're sort of obvious, it'll be obvious that you haven't read the website or studied it, and that's going to be something that sort of counts against you in the interview day. Questions about politics, religion, and social issues, I would say ask those at your peril. Some people might be interested in it and be interested in a lively conversation on the subject. Other people will not be interested or will be offended and think that that's not something that they should be engaged about and won't work too well. Some common pitfalls in interviews other than the matter of questions. Be careful to avoid being perceived as snobbish or arrogant. That is really important. I can't tell you how many people I've seen who did not get jobs at law firms, or at least at my law firm, when they were perceived as being arrogant. If you are perceived that way, that word is going to end up on the evaluation reports that get sent in and collected up and looked at, and it's going to be hard to get over. So, how shall I say? If you have a tendency to be arrogant or snobbish, mask it that day and instead be a little more humble and decent. If going to dinner or going to lunch is part of the interview day, by way of common pitfalls, order something that's going to be easy to eat and that you can eat with a fork and not drip it on your tie or on your blouse. Again, this is something that I've seen happen, and it might seem funny. It seems a little funny to me as I think about it, but it's not funny when it actually happens. It's embarrassing, and it can even result in more than just embarrassment. Certainly, I know this goes without saying, don't drink too much. If you're going out to dinner and people have a glass of wine, that's fine. Order one if you are a drinker, if you're not a teetotaler. Have a glass of wine, there's nothing in the world wrong with that, but sip it. Whatever you do, don't get tipsy at dinner. It doesn't play well. As much as you may think that it's really good when it's happening, it's not. Guarantee you it's not. Order a glass of wine or order a beer. Don't order a martini and then a second martini. It'll be the worst thing you could possibly do. It should also go without saying that you shouldn't use salty language in an interview. I will tell you that some people do it. Some people even do it to the extreme. It doesn't play well, and it won't inure to your benefit. It will inure to your detriment. So don't do it. Now, the interview's not over when you leave the interview room, the last interview, or when you get on the elevator to go back to wherever you came from. A convention has arisen these days to send thank you notes. Interviewees send thank you notes of some kind to interviewers. This is not a requirement. You don't have to do it. I've already said a time or two, it's a free country. But a lot of people do it, and it may be that some people expect it. Some interviewers expect it. I would put it this way, you can't go wrong doing it. It's not going to hurt, and it may help. So a little bit of advice about thank you notes. Certainly the most gracious thank you note that can be sent is a handwritten note on a note card or a note paper with a handwritten envelope. That's the best you can do, I think. Does that mean that, I don't think, though, that that's the only thing you can do. For myself, when I receive thank you notes, that was terrific, or is terrific. It doesn't really trouble me to get a thank you note in the form of an email. I'm not everybody, though. Some people may prefer the more gracious thank you note that's handwritten on notepaper and with a handwritten envelope. You'll have to decide for yourself how you go. The safest course is surely to do the handwritten note. But I guess suffice it to say, a lot of people do send handwritten or do send thank you notes. A lot of people probably expect them, and so you probably ought to consider doing it. What sort of responsiveness should you expect from the company that you've interviewed with, the law firm or the organization or whatever it is? You shouldn't expect to hear from them the next day. Some people worry about that, I believe. They haven't heard from them in a day or 3 days or a week. They worry that all is for naught and it's no good. That's not true. It takes some time for people to process an interview day. So if it's 2 weeks or 3 weeks, I don't think you should worry about it. If it gets to be a month, I think by that time it's fine for you to call up a recruiting coordinator or the hiring person at whatever company it is and inquire as to what you should expect with respect to a response. You're trying to get your situation all straightened out and buttoned up, and sure would like to know when you can expect to hear from them. Nothing wrong with that, and that's all fine. When you receive an offer, you happily receive an offer on the phone or in the mail. Generally, I think offers are extended on the phone. But however you receive an offer, what should you do with it? My thought is that you do not have to accept on the spot. Nobody expects you to accept on the spot. I think people expect you to instead say that you are delighted to have received the offer, you're thrilled, and you'd like to think about it for a couple of days or for a little while. You have some other things going, and you want to make sure you make the right choice in the end, but you'd like to think about it for a few days. I think that's fine. Nobody's going to be surprised by that. I think they will, in fact, expect it and respect it. So that's all fine. I've enjoyed being with you and sharing my remarks here today. Good luck with your job search and the interview process. Thank you very much.